Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Office Hours. It must be Tuesday at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. My name is Jeff Blankenburg. I've even got our good friend Scott here with us today. And we're here to answer your questions about Alexa, ambient computing, voice development, whatever you got. We're happy to chat. Before we get started, and I'd love to hear how things are going for Ryan and Scott, I wanted to mention I had a discovery this morning in our Slack community. Let me talk about that for a second. If you are not currently a part of our Slack community, I'm trying to find for it somewhere. Here it is. Throw that link on the screen. It's alexa.design/Slack. Anyone is welcome that's interested in building for or thinking about building for Alexa. But in there, someone asked me in a private message, hey, I wish we had a channel about in-skill purchasing. And I thought to myself, wow, there is a channel about in-skill purchasing. That's surprising that you would ask me that. So I went and looked and realized that a lot of people may not realize in a Slack community that there are lots of other channels that you are not in by default. So by default, when you join the community, there's 6 or 7 channels that you're automatically subscribed to. But there are another 20 or so that exist just for those that have interest in specific topics, whether that's APL or Alexa Conversations or ISP or whatever. And so if you're in our community and you didn't realize those channels exist, I did post something in the Slack this morning. But go check it out. There's a lot of other places to talk about very specific things as you're building. So go check it out, I guess is my message there. So Ryan and Scott, welcome. I see Ryan is here in front of his hexagons, which is always nice to see.
Yes.
And Scott is broadcasting from a cave in the middle of the mountains.
Yes.
His basement,
yes.
maybe.
Perfect.
Alaskan mountains, Mount McKinley.
This is a different view for you.
Yeah.
So where are you today?
So this is, we just put up our wallpaper in the downstairs living room, which honestly, like I never would have thought would have ever put up wallpaper in a house ever, because it's not nice.
It's coming back. It's coming back.
Wallpaper up.
It's odd that you say that, Scott. I don't want to interrupt your story, and I definitely want to come back to it. But both Ryan and I are standing in front of wallpaper also.
Yes. Yeah. So maybe I'm not so crazy.
No, I mean, the toys aren't. But you can see this wood grain that's behind me. That's wallpaper.
That's all wallpaper, yeah. So we put this up because this house that we bought is 125 years old. And so we're trying to find really cool period stuff to put in there. So this particular wallpaper is a recreation of the wallpaper that they used in something called the Cloud Club, which was the swankiest place to be in Manhattan in 1924. It was like the who's the guy that made the Spruce Goose Aviator? The movie The Aviator was about him.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Leonardo DiCaprio played him.
Yes, I should know this.
Howard Hughes.
Howard Hughes, yes. So apparently he went there a lot, and before he went, into his house and then never left again. But apparently, that was. So this is the reason why we got this, is because it's very like 1920s swanky.
Yeah. Well, and it's weird because now all of us professionally are trying to be members of the Cloud Club, so it makes sense.
That's true. It's weirdly coming back around again.
It is. Also, there were a couple of questions, not only about your darker background, but whether or not you just recently robbed a bank in the Old West.
Why would you ask me that?
I think the actual question was, is Scott in a Western? I like the bandana scarf combo, whatever you've got working there.
It feels like that sometimes. I honestly, I live in a house that was built in 1894. So that was the Old West.
Right.
And it still holds heat as if it were in the Old West. And being that it is 40 degrees outside and we just got a torrential an atmospheric river dumping out onto the Seattle area, it is very cold here, and my house doesn't keep the heat. So you know what? I get these cool new accessories to wear around the house. I also have a house coat that I get to wear and be all fancy.
I like it.
My
delightful scarf. We won't mock you. You look fantastic.
Well, thank you.
And we actually got snow here on Sunday. It snowed all day. The ground was covered, but it didn't stick. It was gone by the morning.
Oh, yeah.
My kids were really hoping for a snow day, and I was like, kids, the roads aren't even anything but wet. You're not missing.
I
All
mean,
right,
you can
we should probably get into some questions.
I guess.
And I guess the first one is from Arkoff on Twitch. He says, I'm building a radio skill and it's working perfectly when I test. However, I can't get past the validation step. And then there's a follow-up. It keeps failing on the example phrases, but when I use the example phrases, it works with no issue. So I don't see anything beyond that. Arkoff, the first thing I would love for you to clarify is when you say it fails on the example phrases, can you be more specific? Is there a specific error message you're getting or something that we can dig into a little bit deeper? Because I do know there is a validation step for all skills that you have to go through. There's some automated tests that run against your skill. Here's my guess. I'm just going to lay this out based on my experience in the past. You have example phrases for your skill, right? There's 3 different example phrases that you provide as part of your certification metadata. And they are things that in the store people will see. In fact, I like to be very explicit with this. So let's share my screen here and I'll show you what I mean. Share screen. Yes, please. Okay, so I'm in the skills store, and let's just find one. Culver's. I love Culver's. I don't know about their skill. I haven't used their skill, but their food is fantastic. So when we talk about example phrases, what we're talking about is these. These are things that they added to their skill as metadata, but these are the 3 things that are shown when a user looks at it in the store. So these are things that have to work perfectly. So the catch on the test is that there has to be exactly an intent that has a sample utterance that 100% matches completely. Spaces are the same. Wording is the same. If there's a slot value in there, that's fine, but there has to be a slot value for that thing as well. So there has to be a 100% match. I can stop sharing my screen. There has to be a 100% match in order for that test to pass. So I don't know if that's the case, but that's where I'm leaning on this one, at least initially. And so I would want to make sure that you verify very closely, as explicitly as you possibly can, that the example phrases that you've provided match exactly the intents and sample utterances that you have in your skill.
Yeah, I'm literally doing a case about this right now. I was just typing this up. It's we have a developer asking why his skill isn't working or what the problem is, and his phrases are open, start, and launch, and he directs the public to say ask. So there's a switch there, and it doesn't work. So that's it.
That's all it takes. All right. So Arkoff, I'm hoping that helps solve your problem. But keep me posted. We can continue talking during the chat. We're just continuing to move down the chat from all of the different places. By the way, if you guys didn't know, we are broadcasting this live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. So pick your favorite social network, and you can comment in all of those places, I think. I actually don't know how Twitter works, but I think you can comment there. Well, no. So Arkoff, I want to be really clear. You're saying that you use them on your Echo, and those exact phrases work for you. This is different. It may very well work when you speak to the device. What I'm talking about is an explicit match between the 3 sample phrases you provided and exact same wording in your sample utterances for your intents, without any variation at all. Okay, if that's the case, and I'd love to see the error message that you're actually getting, because that tends to be the issue people have. And if that's not the case, let's see the error and we can dig in. Okay, we'll move on just for a moment. Gavin Watson, Startup are here. They say hi. Habuma, Phelps Inc. Phelps was actually the one that asked me about the other channels in Slack this morning. So good to see you here. Startup is impressed that you have a 125-year-old house, which is interesting to me. Startup is based in India, and I have this conversation a lot with folks in Europe too.
Yeah,
25-year-old house in America is old. But everything in it, like when I walk through London, literally every building is older than America, and it's amazing to me.
Yeah, I know it's not important. Like, 125 years. Wow, that's amazing.
That's
My
adorable.
house is 2,000 years old.
So it's a new build. That's cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, Oxygen Box says, for hosted skills, is there some setting I need to set for images to display in the APL authoring tool? The images are hosted in S3, external of the hosted skill, and I'm able to display the image in the APL Ninja authoring tool, but not display in the Amazon tool. Ooh, that's a good one.
That's really interesting.
So the fact that APL Ninja shows it suggests to me that they have exposed them to the internet, so they've made them publicly accessible in that S3 bucket. And S3 by default exposes everything on HTTPS, which is also a requirement.
Depends on how you do that. If you do the static hosting in S3, that is not HTTPS.
Oh,
so that might actually be
interesting,
something to consider there. So if you do the static web hosting, that only supports HTTP. I just ran into this yesterday, which is why I know, because I was doing something that required images over HTTPS, and I was getting blank images. So that might be the same case here, where APL Ninja is just not doing the same validation as ours. Because definitely on the Alexa device, it requires HTTPS. So I'm assuming that our authoring tool has the same.
Right. So that could be the catch, is that the APL Ninja probably is not having that same requirement. Very interesting. So that raises another question, Ryan, and we can have some S3 discussion here. If I just have a collection of files, whether that is sound effects or images or whatever, I generally don't even go through the static hosting process of like setting up my S3 bucket to be a hosted place that I could like run a website or anything. I literally just throw them in an S3 bucket, make the bucket public, and then point to the individual files without going through the setting up the static web hosting options. So I guess my question for you, or maybe for S3, is, in that case, am I exposing them as HTTPS?
What's the URL at that point then?
It's a long, gross S3 bucket.
You're not doing the pre-signed URLs. You're just using the straight.
I'll go grab this to show you. S3, Amazon. Let's go. Sign into my console. What? No. S3.aws. Not okay. AWS. I'm on a machine that I don't usually do a lot of development on, so it's fighting me. Sign into the console. I was logged into something else. Got it. Okay. Now we're going. I know you guys can't see this, but S3. I'm gonna grab one of my buckets that has a bunch of stuff in it that I would have exposed, like a good example.
I'm doing the same thing in my AWS account as well.
I'm listening to both of you with great intent.
Okay, so I'm going to do this file. We're just going to take this, copy link address, and I'm going to drop this. Anybody can hit this if they want, I guess. I'll just eat the bandwidth. But this is an example of the URL that I am sharing, and I'll put it in our private chat so you can see it easier.
Yes.
So you can see that has an HTTPS address. So I assume that that's fine, and that's the address that I would use to reference this individual sound effect for a skill. But I don't have any static hosting set up on this bucket at all.
Yeah, so if you go through static web hosting, you get a URL that ends in s3-website-region.amazon.aws.com. And that acts more like a web server. So I think the way that you're using it there is perfectly fine and reasonable. The recommendation is still to go through like CloudFront or something like that, so you're not exposing the name of the bucket and everything like that. But
sure.
Besides that, if you use this, then it is HTTPS. If you use the same asset through static web hosting, then it only gives you an HTTP.
Got it. So I haven't.
Static web hosting allows you to do other things like redirects and set up error pages, and it acts more like a web server.
Right. So I haven't seen any replies from Oxygen Box since the question. So we're not getting any clarification on what they are doing specifically, but we'll keep an eye out for that. But that's the discussion.
And to be clear, to get your URL, like you actually went in the S3 bucket, you clicked on that MP3 in this case, and then you use the link that the attributes show you right there.
Yes.
And it has to be a public read, which
yes,
S3 will give you all kinds of.
I think in this case, the bucket and the file are both marked as public.
Yeah, that should work. That should work for Oxygen Box's use case.
Okay. Well, let's see if Oxygen Box replies.
Oh, he did. He just did. He does have HTTPS in the URL. Ooh.
Well, okay. So interesting. So having it in the URL and having the file exposed that way are different, though, aren't they? Like I can try and throw an HTTPS address at a file that isn't, and it'll still serve
it shows up. What's confusing me is APL Ninja is able to pull it up.
Right.
Hey, Oxygen Box, can you on Slack send me the URL that you're using? Unless you don't want to paste it in the comments. I'd love to know exactly.
Yeah, well, we'll keep digging into this one. I think this is an interesting problem that probably lots of folks might run into. So happy to.
There's lots of reasons why this happens. So lots of different settings to check.
So Scott, I have a question for you. Fabio on YouTube says, "Can I?" He says talk, but what he means is write. Can I write in Portuguese to certify my skill? Sometimes language can be difficult. So he's publishing a skill in Brazil, probably in Portuguese. Can all of his certification notes and instructions also be written in Portuguese?
Of course. Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have one of the primary things that we have to do before we can release any Alexa functions at all in any other region is have every square inch of documentation written in that language. Okay. So if it's in Portuguese, if it's in, Brazilian Portuguese, then write it all in Portuguese. It's fine. Because everybody there, all the testers are going to be able to read it. If they need clarification because you happen to get the one certification team that doesn't have a Portuguese speaker on there, they'll just let you know. It's no big deal.
Got it.
And again, this is like one of those moments where I feel like people get real cagey about submitting often, but please submit your skill 35 times. Nobody cares. It's fine.
Awesome.
Like
feedback.
It's no big deal. It's guys, do it. It's fine. That's what we're here for.
Yeah. So. And so this leads to another question. I know Fabio's based in Brazil and probably is publishing a skill for Brazil, but what if he was publishing a skill for US English, but is not confident enough in his English to explain all of his testing and certification stuff? So he writes all of that in Portuguese.
It's kind of a hard thing. So our kind of default is to always address them how they wrote into us. So if you're from Brazil and you're writing in English, then it's like the way that our team kind of feels about this. We've talked about this is that if you're comfortable enough speaking in English, it's not cool to say, hey man, if you want we can speak it in Portuguese if you like. It's kind of hard. So it's entirely up to you if you feel confident enough to write in English, or more than that, like if the skill itself is not that complex. And you don't need it to be like a dictionary of stuff that you're putting in the description, then just write it in English. If not, it can go in Portuguese too. It can do both. That's both is fine. There's plenty of space in the submission description box in the testing instructions. Use the testing instructions as much as you can. That is the easiest and the fastest way to speak directly at the certification team that's handling your skills. So they will, whatever message you want to put in there, like, hey, I can speak English, or hey, I can do Portuguese, whichever one's the easiest one, put them both in, put one in. It's entirely up to you. But like I said, if they can't figure it out, they'll just tell you, and that's fine. Just if we need to have a bridge, write us. That's what we do. We're the DAG team. That's what we do. And then on top of that, just submit your skill again. It's fine.
Right.
We don't care how many times you submit. It's fine.
Yeah, I think there's probably a suspicion amongst most developers that submitting their skill frequently, daily, right? Like,
Mm.
oh, I failed, fix that thing,
Yeah.
submit
No,
it.
there definitely is.
I think they have probably been in a position where they've been on the debugging side of an application, and they realize that what they're really doing is forcing the certification team to be their debugger. Like, you guys find all my bugs for me. I don't need to do it. I think they feel like that's bad practice. Whether or not you guys care, it's still bad practice.
Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of what they're doing, though.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we are technically, we're not debugging your skills. So if we find a fault somewhere, we're not going to fix it for you, but we are going to tell you what it is.
Right.
So there should be.
That's where the gold is.
And so, like, we can't work on your skill. Basically we can't work on anybody's skill for them. But what we can do is tell you what the mistakes are, and you can go and fix it yourself. They should be pretty detailed descriptions. That's where we tend to find a little bit of the disconnect, is that sometimes the certification team will speak a little bit more technically and not quite as casual as it may need to be for every single developer. So that's why we exist. That's why I'm here. So no big deal. Just let us know if you have any questions.
Cool. All right, another interesting question here. I'm actually the question we had come in about trying to remember who wrote that. Arkoff, that's Ryan Kaufman. He sent me a direct message on Slack of his error message that he's getting in validation, and his 3 phrases are Alexa. I don't want to say this out loud, but it's the A word, and then the 3 different ones are play WSPY local news, launch WSPY local news, and open WSPY local news. So what I'm going to ask you for, Ryan, and I'll send you a message here on Twitter at the same time, or I guess, you sent this on Twitter. Can you send me a shot of your invocation name screen? And we'll take a look at that, because WSPY in his thing is w.s.p.space which is fine. It's an initialism, so that makes sense that you would do it that way. I just want to make sure that the invocation name matches. Then this is where that matching really becomes very important. So we'll take a look at that in a second. But the question that I wanted to answer that I just saw was from Brian Campbell on Twitch, which is, do you have any idea how the Alexa Blueprint's custom Q&A skill is created? I would like to duplicate its functionality in code. Basically provide the user with a website that allows them to add their own questions and answers, and then have Alexa react to the questions. Yes, I do have an idea. Well, I take it back. I've not actually seen the code for that blueprint, but my suspicion, based on my knowledge of Alexa skills and the number of times I've built a custom Q&A skill blueprint, gives me enough working knowledge to take a really educated guess at this. And Ryan, I don't know if you've played with this blueprint, but I'd love your insight on this as well. But my suspicion is that each of the questions are their own intents, and there is just a singular response that each of those intents gets. And I know they've recently modernized the blueprint so that you can add multiple phrases. So like if they say A or B or C, then I'm going to respond D with them. And so what you're doing is you're taking A, B, and C and making each of those sample utterances for the same intent. But that's my understanding of how that is built, is just a singular intent for each question, and then a singular response as a result of that question being asked. And the newer modern version, I don't know when they updated it, but in the last year, gave you the ability to add multiple sample utterances to it. But it's a really simple structure otherwise. That's my interpretation of that blueprint. What do you think, Ryan?
That would be my guess. I am digging. So AuctionBox did send me his URL, so I'm kind of digging into that. But I was mostly paying attention to what you were talking about. I think what you described is right on, and I know that there's been a few people brought up in the past. Wouldn't it be great if you could start with a blueprint and click a button and say like edit it, or make it my own, and have like all of a sudden now you have a custom skill with all the Q&A blueprint open source into your code base, and then you could take it and run with it. Like I know that's been a common thing. I know people would love to be able to dissect those blueprints to see how they operate and learn best practices and learn other examples. I was going to check in a minute to see if we had. So we have a bunch of GitHub repositories. We have a GitHub organization called Alexa-samples. And we might have a sample skill that does like a Q&A type thing. So I was going to search that in a little bit to see if we had anything there. But other than that, I think what Jeff you described is, we don't know exactly how they implemented it, but that seems like a really logical place to start.
Got it. Okay. Moving on. We have a question from how I pronounce this is Swagui Mongui on Twitter. And they said, hello, are you going to extend and they specifically call out ultrasound detection. I think they just mean sound detection functionality to other Echo devices like the Dot 3 or the Studio, or is it only for the Dot 4 and the 4 Echo?
Ultrasound. No. That's
so for sound detection, and just to clarify with folks, this is what we're talking about. This is in the app. If I'm creating a routine, it can detect these kinds of sounds: snoring, baby crying, water sounds, dog barking, beeping appliance, or coughing. The question is, will it apply to other devices? I think it already does. I didn't think that was limited to a specific subset of devices. In fact, I would be very surprised if this didn't even work on like the original V1 Echo and Echo Dot. So my go-to understanding of that is that it should work everywhere.
We haven't updated the mics or anything like that. There haven't been any like hardware changes in other than the normal stuff, right? Like,
so I misunderstood. There is actually ultrasound motion detection, and this is actually something that limits. It's not limited. It recognizes when someone is in a room. It can actually recognize when a room has been occupied or when people come into it just by noticing like the sound of people moving. And you've probably seen this on some. If you have newer devices, you've probably seen this where you walk into a room and the blue light lights up for a second. I actually didn't realize this was called ultrasound motion detection. And Ryan, I think this was Ryan that sent me this. Yeah. Sent me a nice doc. So I'll drop this link in the chat. But it basically says it's available on Echo Dot 4th generation and Echo 4th generation. So, my misunderstanding. I apologize for that. It appears that, yes, it is limited to only a couple of devices. I'll send the link to all of you. And I don't have any information on when other devices may get access to that. I would imagine future devices will continue to get that functionality, but I don't know anything about extending that functionality to earlier devices. There might be something special in the hardware, but I don't actually know how that is handled.
Yeah, I was just reading about this week because either like a new blog post went out or an email or something was talking about this very specifically. And it is device hardware that only exists in the newer devices, is my understanding.
Okay.
I just can't remember where I found it.
Going back to the issue we were talking with Oxygen Box about, people are starting to lean into the idea that it's actually a CORS issue, cross-origin request. I suppose that's a possibility as well. And that APL Ninja doesn't seem to care, but we do care about CORS. And so you actually need that header that allows access. It's he says here, Tapster says, CORS header access control allow origin is missing. And he's getting that as a dev console error in his APL for images that don't have that. So I think there's a simple way in S3 also to allow CORS, the cross-origin requests. So that might be another thing to try, Oxygen Box. Ryan, did you have any more thoughts on that topic? I know you said
no. I just got as far as pulling his image. He sent me the image, and I plopped it into an APL doc, and sure enough, it does not load, even though I can get it in the browser.
Okay.
So I've definitely confirmed he's not doing anything silly.
So cross-origin scripting might actually be it. And I think there is a way in S3 to turn that on. I have to remember where that is.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I finally got the error message. It is a CORS thing, access control allow origin. So developer.amazon.com needs to be allowed So it is a course thing.
Cool. It feels like I'm gonna take a bold stance here, but Coors has burned me so many times in my professional development career, and I often struggle to understand the benefit of, like, by default, most services have Coors off, and it just feels like it's anti the purpose of the internet, which is to have all the information available and useful to people. And we consistently lock things down and put up walls and block things so that they can't be used in the way that people might want. I don't know. It just, of course, annoys me. I've never found many times where I appreciate having it.
It's, it's one of those, you can restrict so that other people can't call your API, right? So that only you allow certain domains in. Yeah,
but there are other ways to do that.
Jeff, I know you are like the nicest guy in the world, but there are bad people out there who try to do bad things.
The whole point with the internet is that the internet was awesome until the bad people showed up. People with bandanas, rob banks in the old.
I agree. I 100% agree with you.
I mean, early on, the early days of the internet were amazing. We could build anything, and you were like, "Yeah, this is my bank website I just built. There's no security." Like, what? And now it's like, we need to lock everything down and keep everyone out, and then we'll build under that umbrella. And
for me, the Flash animation.
Say that again, Scott?
The Flash animation of the early internet was where it was at for me.
It's funny you say that, and this is certainly going to put me in a very specific age group. But someone was there was a TikTok first that should make me seem like I'm too old to even view TikTok. But there was a person, and it was a video, and they said, give me an example of something that is impactful in your life that people younger than you and older than you can't appreciate. Like, it's very specific to you and like your tiny range of a couple of years. And the person held up the entire DVD series of the Strong Bad Email series.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It's just gonna say
DVD Homestar Runner.
An important part of my upbringing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yep.
I didn't even know they were offered as DVDs, but now I may need to go find those.
I mean, I'm kind of surprised they aren't being offered as VHS tapes, to be honest.
True.
Like, it feels like that's what they would do. Like,
or
those guys would do
37
that.
floppies.
Yeah.
When we found our bearded dragon, my initial reaction was his name should be Trogdor.
Yeah.
But I got voted down. I'm like, how can you vote down Trogdor?
Vote down
the Burninator.
The Burninator. Yeah.
So I have a buddy who runs a Plex server, and he has a bunch of good content on there. And I think I may have to have him go find all of the Strong Bad Email, because if they're on DVDs, that means somebody has ripped them and thrown them up on the internet somewhere. I would watch every single one of those again. My favorite one, it comes up in my head all the time. And I'm sorry for sidebarring on Strong Bad here for a minute. If you guys aren't familiar with Homestar Runner, you missed out.
And go there on PC.
There's one where he what is it? He's talking about, someone is asking him to dance or something like that. And it's basically like, what kind of jig do you use when you go fishing? And they're talking about a fishing lure. Yes. But instead he stands in the boat and makes up this song about, like, come on and get in the boat, fish. Come on. Like, he's just doing a jig, trying to get the fish, and fish just keep jumping into the boat. It's amazing. But that song, come on, get in the boat, is locked in right here all the time.
I still quote Strong's ad constantly. Like, yeah. I still quote him. Like, just every once in a while, somebody will say something, and I'll just like zone off and say "covered bridges," and just it's tattooed into my brain. I can't get it out.
Yeah, they were I couldn't wait for another email to come out. Oh my gosh, it was so great.
Yeah. I've sent all of them.
Back on topic, everybody. My apologies for that sidebar. I did, by the way, at some point, I have to find them. I had all of the miniature figures of all the Homestar Runner.
Of course you did.
Yeah,
of course you did.
They ended up in my kids' toys somewhere. I have to find them. Okay. The person asked, this is S. Ray saying on Twitch, after submitting for certification, do future certification submissions go to the same testing teams? Like, do they already have the familiarity, or is each submission a brand new, I might be learning for the first time about your skill, experience for the certification team?
Wow. I don't know. And I don't think I can say.
Got it.
I honestly,
Stumped him.
my first reaction would be that yes, it would come back to the same certification team. But that's not possible because just simply because of time changes. So not likely.
So it is fair to assume, or at least
Yeah.
safe to assume, that every time you submit your skill, even if it's second, third, fourth, fifth time before you pass,
Yeah, it's going to go to another.
it could potentially go to a different team. It's possible
Potentially.
it could
Yeah.
land with the same team, but it's not a guarantee in any way.
Yeah, if it comes back in the same hour, likely it's going to go to the same team because they're all still there. I think. I'm not sure. I don't know how they route it. I know that this, like there are teams that handle specific language requests. There are teams that handle specific stuff. I don't know. That's a tough one. I don't know how it's exactly put together. Well, okay. So let me just go back to what I originally said. So it's likely that if you submit it within the same 8-hour time period, you'll probably get the same team. But if not, I mean, that might not be the case either. But
Sure.
Use the testing instructions. Be descriptive. So maybe not, maybe.
Right. Or here's another follow-up question to that. Does the same team test in different locales? So could one team test an Italian skill and then a Brazilian skill and then a US skill?
Yes, if they can support the language, which most of the time they can, but
Okay.
sometimes they can't.
Got
So yeah, sure. Yeah.
And then there's a third question, which is more just a comment, which is, what if the member of the testing team has left for whatever reason, right? They moved on to a different job or a different company or whatever. Obviously, that would make it pretty difficult for you to end up with the same person. So it's a valid point.
It's not entirely that important to be testing with the same person. The team tests every single skill, every single time the same way. They have a very distinct and strict set of guidelines that they are not allowed to deviate from. So, that's why I always encourage people, use the testing instructions as much as you can and be descriptive.
Yep.
So it's not entirely important, really. It may feel like it. I know, like sometimes you'll get a rapport going with somebody, and it feels like you guys are connecting, and and that's fine. I'd love to tell people, if you have any more questions, keep the link. Whenever I send a case back out to somebody, there's a link at the bottom of the email that allows them to respond directly back to me, and I tell them keep that, because it'll reopen that case. If you reopen it like a year later, it's fine. You can come, but it'll respond directly back to me. So nice. I can try to help you again, So I try to do that. I don't know if the certification team's allowed to do anything like that, but I know that stuff like that happens. It's just, we're humans. So, but that being said, I don't know if it's entirely important to go straight to the same person every single time.
Yeah.
The certification team's pretty awesome.
Awesome. So. Good feedback. Good insight for the folks that are watching. So one of the other questions that we've been focused on here was Ryan Kaufman and his fight with his invocation name and his example phrases and the certification validation that is failing. So I think we're to the point now. He sent a picture of his invocation name. It matches exactly what his sample phrases are. So I feel like I've used up my capable knowledge for understanding why he might be getting the error he's getting. And he's even sent a few second clips of him speaking to his device and having it work just fine. So this feels like there's something weird happening. And my recommendation at this point, Ryan, is to drop a message here. If you go to the Contact Us form and fill this out, you will end up with someone very friendly and helpful, maybe even Scott, that can help you solve this problem. And they should be able to dig in a little bit deeper. So I think using the messages you have, if you could provide links to the files, I think even having posted them to Slack, they now have a public URL. So you could even just point to those files and say, hey, here's the image, here's the video, whatever. So you don't have to find external hosting for those. But send a message into the Contact Us. See if they can get you some help. If they can't, here's the next step. you will get a ticket number that is sent to you as part of the case that you're working through. And if you're not getting the responses or the answer that you need, which generally is not a problem at all, reach out to me, send me that number, and I can try to escalate. I'll just reach out to Scott and say, hey, man, can we just look at this ticket? Let's help this guy out. So we'll get this figured out for you. We'll have somebody dig in and really take a look at it. But that would be my recommendation is let's fill out a contact us form. Let's go through the proper channels. Make sure you get the support that you need to make sure that this isn't some like weird bug that you found. But my best suspicion is there is some minor slight difference between your sample utterances and your invocation name and what you've provided. So I don't know entirely, but we will investigate and we'll figure this thing out hopefully very quickly. Contact us. Can't recommend that enough for all of you. It is the place to go when you run into an issue. All right, I think we got to the bottom of the list of comments and questions.
Nice.
Brian Tarbach says he took him 5 tries to get the Spanish version of his skill approved, but it finally happened. Each iteration was finding different issues, mostly about words he had missed translating.
Yeah, that's the thing. We're not. We're all human. Like it's all tested by humans. So stuff happens. This is why we're all working together. That's why I tell people to submit 1,000 times. I don't care. Just do it. Keep them on their toes. I believe it's BANDITO.
Oh, do you want the O? I wasn't sure. Go with the O.
Makes more sense. Yeah.
All right.
I'm from Yakima, so makes sense.
Perfect. So Ryan Kaufman said he'll do that. He's made many Alexa skills, and we are always super helpful. That is great to hear. It's good to give Scott and his team that kind of feedback. And Brian Tarbach says he appreciates the certification team, so he's glad that they're around and able to help. I am too, honestly, because there's no way Ryan and I could do this all by ourselves. That would be a near impossibility. But there's 20 or so of you folks, right, Scott?
Oh, yeah. Internationally? Yeah, that's probably a safe number, maybe 30.
Okay.
And most of us are either on the biz side or the tech side. So we handle each case depending on what they're about. But
sure.
We have a whole tech team of geniuses. These guys are
awesome,
amazingly smart to help knock out the technical problems with Alexa stuff. Yeah.
Cool. That is super awesome. Oh, I shouldn't have looked at that Culver's skill. Now I want a Butterburger for lunch. Have you guys been to Culver's?
I don't know what Culver's is.
It's a burger
pretty
place.
good restaurant.
They have burgers and they have frozen custard, which is delicious.
That's right, custard. You're Midwest, aren't you? I forgot.
Yeah, well, it's based in Wisconsin, so like they love their cheeses and all that stuff there as well.
I lived in Missouri for 2 years, and custard was everywhere, and I didn't understand. I've never had custard. I didn't know what it was, and it was frozen custard everywhere, and I never tried it because it sounded gross.
Oh man, it's
good.
It's
good.
like a better version of ice cream.
Yeah, that's what everybody says. I don't know. I was 19. I don't know.
Sure. So Startup just asked, are there any third-party testing services?
There are third-party skill building services that amount to the same, that basically amount to that. Yeah, there are companies that you can contact that you can just have them build your entire skill start to front or start to finish.
I think he's suggesting he wants to build it. He just wants another team to test it. I don't know what the benefit of that would be.
It wouldn't be able to be certifiable through Amazon officially. So essentially what would happen is that if somebody else tested it, a third party would test it, and then they would then say, yep, it's all good. And then you would then submit that for testing from Amazon, because Amazon has to test everything. So it would kind of double the process. But if you were looking at having somebody building one, that's something you can do.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, like we'll work with you through the whole testing process as well.
Got it. This is another interesting question from Fabio on YouTube. Is it possible to use CI/CD processes to deploy a skill? The answer to this is kind of. And the reason that I say that is because we're going to take a step back and do a little educational moment on Alexa skill building. So for a traditional skill using an interaction model and all that stuff, so we're not talking about Alexa conversations, which gets a little grayer, but for a traditional interaction model where you have your intents and your slots and all that stuff, and then you have a back-end service that handles all those requests, you can do CI/CD for the back-end all day. It doesn't require new certification. It doesn't require anything. So if you want to have a CI/CD pipeline that's pumping all of your stuff directly to the back-end service for your code, yes, you can do that. And that's probably 90% of building a skill anyway, is writing the back-end system. The front end, though, if you make any changes to your interaction model, to your slots, to sample utterances, any of that kind of stuff, for the most part, you have to go back through certification. There are exceptions to that rule, and you can see those in the docs. Like if you just add a slot value to a slot, they'll let you update that automatically. You don't have to go back through certification. But if you add an intent, or I think sample utterances are still in the slot value kind of category. But if you add any fundamentally new thing or remove a thing from your interaction model, it will require you to go through certification again, which kind of gets in the way of the C in CI. Because you won't be able to do it continuously. You'll push it and then wait, and then push it and then wait. But you'll have to go through certification to do those things. So can you do it all in an automated process, all from the command line? 100%. You can push, you can do all of this, that you can deploy, you can push to certification. All of that stuff can happen from the CLI, automated in a completely streamlined fashion. But once you push a change to your interaction model, you're going to wait. And the best turnaround I've ever seen on a skill was about 6 hours. So I don't consider that continuous. But for your back end, yeah, 100%. You can do all of that stuff and continue to deploy on a minute by minute basis or whatever you'd like. So I hope that answers your question. There are some barriers in the way on the front end side of your skill, but that usually requires far less consistent development than your back end does. What do you think, Ryan? I answered that independently, but I'd love your opinion.
No, I don't really have anything to add to it. I mean, I think once for single developers, like I think using the console and everything is great, but once you start working on teams, then you want to benefit from repositories and manage your code. You want to build pipelines and all that. And you certainly can build all the pipelines and automate everything except for the manual, certification process. But I would actually recommend, especially if you're using Lambda in the backend or whatever server you're using for your backend code, absolutely have that go through some CI/CD pipeline, have unit tests run, make sure that those are passing before you deploy code out there.
Yes,
I think there's a ton of benefits to doing that, and especially on a skill that you're going to be updating, continuously or at some period, which I would encourage everyone to keep updating their skills to make them more relevant for end users. But yeah, absolutely, there's ways to do that.
Awesome.
I'll definitely look at the Ask CLI.
All right.
I had that song in my head. I have had that in my head for like 4 days. With Despacito.
Oh yeah.
It's been in my head for days. I can't get it out. I'm going bananas. I mean, it's actually a Middle Eastern. I think this is a shma. I think is a friend of mine got it. It's not really a bandana so much. Is it, you can see the pattern. I don't know if you can.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Could that double as a mask? Could you pull it up over your face and wear it
like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. What do they call those here? That's
a scarf. Yeah.
Well, isn't that what it's wrapped around?
Is it anything in neck gaiter?
Neck, yeah. You lose a lot of heat in the neck.
You do.
So I was quoting.
I do not have that problem.
I was quoting Leonard Kenny. Yeah, no, this is the most comfortable thing I've ever worn in my life. This is amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's chilly here. I think it's all the way up to 40 today, Ryan.
It's only going to hit 82 here.
You might need a jacket.
Like I can no longer go swimming first thing in the morning to exercise. I have to like take like a lunch break to go swimming. Like it's a whole big problem.
That's really
Yeah.
rough.
That sounds tough,
Yeah.
buddy. Yeah.
I feel for you.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that.
I mean, we all have our struggles, and I'm
Yep.
it's good to see you powering through.
Everybody has struggles.
All right, we got 10 minutes left, and we are happy to just continue to change Scott's name or do whatever. So
that is not this one is not correct.
That's not accurate.
That is incorrect, in fact. That's also incorrect.
I feel like I would like a job where I'm just the producer. I'm not even on screen, and all I do is just add like funny things to your name during the show while you guys all talk. That would be a really fun job. Yes, that's accurate. All right, I don't see any more questions. You haven't seen anything else come in, right?
Mm-mm.
What else can I talk about here? I had a couple of things that I wanted to share if I had time.
I was thinking about doing a Twitch stream.
There's been a lot of conversations about metaverses lately.
Oh man,
for a number of things.
Oh boy,
have you guys read this?
Oh yeah. Snow Crash. No, I have not.
I think Ryan, you're the reason I bought this book. I think. Yeah,
I didn't finish it though. I need to. I started this, then I got sucked into Dune, and then finished Dune, watched the movie. Now I need to get back into this.
So I'm on chapter 3. I'm not deep into this at all, but it reads like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's very quirky and odd, and kind of the whole explanation.
I really like it.
The pizza delivery driver at the beginning, like it has this odd like quirkiness to it that I really enjoyed. So I'm going to continue plowing through this, but maybe we should start like a
book.
What a
bleak view. Like it's such a bleak view of the future.
It is.
Corporations.
Did we lose you, Ryan?
Advertising like on every surface, and it just sounds horrible.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting that like that's the reference point that people go to when Facebook renamed to Meta and talk about metaverse.
Like, I guess
sure that's the right connection you want.
This is the explanation you gave me. Is that was the first time the word metaverse had been used was in this book.
Mm-hmm.
That's my understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that was the last time I was. Yeah, that's why you mentioned. I was trying to remember the last time you talked about this, and that was the first time you mentioned metaverse, right?
So I think I'm gonna have to. I think I'm gonna have to continue digging into this book.
I am kind of terrified about the metaverse, to be honest. There is a lot of really cool possibilities. The fact that I could go into my garage and set up a table and have the table be measured by my AR device, and then it could then walk me through literally every single step of how to build a birdhouse, or how to rebuild a transmission, or how to service a washer and dryer. Like that to me is 100% worth it. I just don't like I don't like the possibilities for it. I don't know. It's like we were just talking about how much we love the beginning of the internet, and about how it's like it was so beautiful and all we did was build things and it was so nice, and then bad people came and ruined it for everyone.
Right.
And it's like
bad people in any metaverse we have too. The thing about metaverses that's interesting to me is that I spend a lot of time talking about the future of ambient computing, just as the nature of my job. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I make as kind of a bold claim is that it is necessary for us to have what I call the democratization of data. Mm-hmm. I need all of the APIs to give me access to stuff with the appropriate credentials and all the things. But like, I need an ambient assistant to be able to talk to my healthcare provider and my life insurance and my doctor and like all of these other things. I need them to be able to digitally communicate with all of these different services and get the data that they need to make good decisions. And it feels to me like as we head down that path and as we expose all these APIs with, again, the right credentials and whatever, that is the foundation for what a metaverse also needs. Because in order for me to interact and engage with all of these potential companies and brands and games and whatever else, I'm using Ready Player One in my head.
Mm-hmm.
In order for all of that stuff to exist and be available, all of the data needs to be in existence and available. And so part of me is super excited, like, oh my gosh, we could actually get to a point where digital assistants are really as close to a human assistant as we could imagine, which is the driving force that I continue to pursue. But it also means what you're describing, Ryan, which is a world covered in advertising. And as you mentioned, Scott, like there's a lot of downside to those things potentially as well.
Well, it's like there's this kind of a shift that where how many people are on Facebook now? 3 billion?
I think it's more than that. There's what, 7 billion on the planet? I think
7 billion people on the planet. 8 now, actually. There's 8 billion people on the planet now. Nobody mentions that. Where we're all kind of moving towards this place where we're all fine with surrendering data, personal information about ourselves, for the sake of getting the benefit of this device thing that we want. Right. I really want this thing to work for me, so I have to give up my data to do so. Well, like personally, I'm not going to plan a bombing or anything. I'm not a criminal, so I don't care if somebody reads my information. So here you go. I think the metaverse is kind of the ultimate eventuality of that concept, that philosophy. Is that where we are now starting to hand over all of our information over the internet to other people, other professionals, who are then entrusted with it to do the thing we want, which is fine. And for the most part, works out pretty great. There's still kind of that weird feeling that people are getting in, like, I don't know. It's weird to think that other people are going to be able to, I think we lost Ryan.
Yeah.
They're going to be able to do these things with all this data. But then, like, I think about, I'm on the inside of Alexa. We don't listen to your conversations. Like, we don't care what you're saying. Nobody does that. And so it's like, there's millions of users. And so there's like, basically I feel like the only way that I'm going to feel comfortable with the metaverse is when I know for a fact that an artificial intelligence is handling it.
It's a good point.
Which is a very controversial thought. But most people think that if an AI is in charge of everything, then it's an AI. So like it's going to be the robopocalypse. But the fact is that the method of control that people tend to worry about when it comes to AIs taking over has always been what humans have done to other humans. We've never actually had an AI in charge before or anything like it. So I feel like
it's like the ultimate case of projection, right?
Yeah.
I know what humans can do, so I'm afraid of that thing. When realistically, I say this all the time in a couple of my talks, right? Doctors are very good at diagnosing what's going on inside a human body, even though they can't physically get inside there.
Right.
What they're finding is that by handing those same case files and images to artificial intelligence engines, they're better at diagnosing. It's not to take anything away from the doctors. They're very good. But the guy's better, right? They're outperforming.
So the IBM, I can never remember the IBM name for their AI, but they have one that it accurately diagnosed cancer in over 1,000 patients, and it then recommended three different versions of treatments that they would then prescribe. And then those versions were handed to doctors, and all the doctors said yes, and all of those people started getting treatments. And it was it was accurate. So
that's amazing. Now let's go down the bad path on that, which is actually that the AI was also plugged into a bunch of other systems. And in order to prove itself as a good diagnoser, was actually introducing things into those people's water supplies to give them cancer so that they would be diagnosed. There you go.
Wowzers.
Let's hope that never happens. Welcome inside my.
I'm not going to sleep for days. My God.
Right. You don't have to live in here every day. That's
yeah. I mean, I get that.
Well, it doesn't appear Ryan's coming back, and we are at time. This has been an enlightening conversation.
Absolutely.
And I'm always glad that you're here, Scott. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget, if you haven't already, and I can't say this enough, join us over at Slack. We're having a bunch of fun there all week, every day, weekends too. And there's lots of folks there to answer your questions and make sure you understand everything you need to know about building for Alexa. So with that, we'll see you next week. And it's not going to let me end the broadcast. We're just going
to stay here. We can't leave. Ever.
Right? No, it literally says an error occurred. Wait a moment, and then try again. I'm going to refresh my browser, so I might disappear for a second, but I'll be right back.
And it's just me now. Hi, everybody. I don't have any control over this, so I literally cannot end this broadcast. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask about my scarf or my beard? Anything particular? The kind of coffee I'm drinking, it's a very dark, rich blend. Oh my God, I'm going to get fired after this. Yeah, this is my last broadcast, everyone. Bye-bye. Oh boy. My fiance is now waving at me and telling me to be normal, and I don't know if that's possible. So I don't think Jeff can come back. We're all going to sit here and watch Scott have a panic attack. Does anybody have any questions? Let's see. We do have a comments page over here, and I don't see anybody. So maybe nobody's watching anymore. Maybe I'm just talking to myself. I think it's a very distinct possibility. Let's see here if I can. Oh, and hey, my Slack isn't open, which means that Jeff can't talk to me right now. And there he is. All righty. Okay, and so apparently StreamYard is apparently down. So I'm going to just close this. I think I'm talking to myself, but just in case, everybody have a good day.